Have you ever wondered why, despite all your prayers and hopes, God hasn't brought that special someone into your life yet, even though you're ready and waiting? Okay, so today we're diving into something that's probably crossed your mind if you're single and following Jesus. Why God didn't let you marry earlier. I'm talking about those moments when you look around and see friends tying the knot, starting families, and you're still here, wondering what's up with God's timing. We'll break it down step by step, looking at what the Bible says, real-life stories from people who've been there, and how this all fits into a bigger picture of trust and growth. Stick around because by the end, you might see your single season in a whole new light. Let's start with the big question that's bugging a lot of us. Why does it feel like God's holding back on marriage when everything else seems to line up? Maybe you're in your late 20s or 30s, you've got a steady job, you're active in church, and you've been praying for a spouse for years. But nothing. No dates that stick, no relationships that go the distance. It's frustrating, right? You start thinking, did I miss something? Is there sin in my life blocking this, or is God just not listening? This challenge hits hard because in our culture, marriage is seen as this milestone that means you've made it in life. Without it, you might feel incomplete, like you're falling behind. And in Christian circles, it can be even tougher. People quote verses about God giving the desires of your heart, but when those desires aren't met, doubt creeps in. You question your faith, your worth, and even God's goodness. That's the problem we're tackling head-on today, understanding why marriage might be delayed, not as a punishment, but as part of a loving plan. Now, to really get into this, we have to look at how God's timing works in general. Think about it, the Bible is full of stories where people had to wait for what they wanted most. Take Abraham and Sarah, for example. God promised them a son, but they waited decades. Sarah was 90 when Isaac finally came. Can you imagine? Year after year, no baby. And they're getting older, probably dealing with all the whispers from neighbors and family. But that wait wasn't random. God was building their faith, showing them that his promises don't depend on human timelines. In Genesis 18, when the angels visit and say Sarah will have a son, she laughs because it seems impossible. But God asks, is anything too hard for the Lord? That's a reminder for us too. If marriage is something God has for you, it'll happen in his perfect time, not when society says it should. Delaying it might be protecting you from settling for less, or rushing into something that could hurt you long term. Another angle on this is personal growth. Sometimes God doesn't let you marry earlier because you're not quite ready yet. Not in a mean way like you're defective, but in a caring way like a parent who knows you need to learn a few more things before stepping into something big. Marriage isn't just about romance. It's about teamwork, sacrifice, forgiveness, and all that stuff that tests your character. If you married too soon, before working through your own issues, it could lead to a lot of pain. For instance, maybe you had some unresolved hurt from past relationships or family stuff. God might be using this single time to heal that. Look at what Paul says in Philippians 1-6. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. That means God's shaping you, bit by bit, into someone who can love well and be loved well. I know a guy named Mark, he's a friend from church who was single until 35. He dated a bit in his 20s, but nothing lasted. Looking back, he realizes he was too focused on his career and hadn't learned to communicate his feelings. During those single years, he joined a men's Bible study, dealt with some anger from his parents' divorce, and grew closer to God. When he met his wife at 36, he was ready to be a solid partner. If he'd married earlier, he thinks it would have crashed and burned. So ask yourself, what is God teaching me right now that I might need for marriage later? But it's not just about you. Sometimes the delay is about the other person. God might be working on your future spouse too. They're out there, going through their own stuff, and the timing has to align for both of you. It's like two puzzle pieces that need to fit just right. If one isn't shaped yet, forcing it won't work. In Ecclesiastes 3:1 it says, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens." That includes meeting the right person. Maybe your spouse is still healing from a bad breakup, or they're in a job that's keeping them busy, or even coming to faith. God sees the whole picture. I remember hearing about a couple, Lisa and Tom. Lisa was ready for marriage at 25, but Tom was still figuring out his walk with Christ. He didn't become a believer until 28 after a tough time in his life. They met at 30 and now they're married with kids. If God had let Lisa marry someone else earlier, she might have missed out on Tom, who shares her values so deeply. It's a reminder that God's not slow, he's precise. Let's talk about avoiding the wrong path. This is huge. God might not have let you marry earlier because he was protecting you from a bad match. We all know those stories where people rush into marriage and it ends in heartbreak. Divorce rates are high, even among Christians, and God doesn't want that for you. In Proverbs 3:5-6, it tells us to trust in the Lord with all our heart and not lean on our own understanding. Sometimes our understanding leads us to people who look good on paper, but aren't right for us spiritually or emotionally. Maybe in your early 20s, you were drawn to someone who wasn't committed to Jesus, or who had habits that would have caused issues down the line. God closing those doors isn't rejection, it's love. Think of it like a dad steering his kid away from a busy street. You might not see the danger, but he does. A woman I know, Sarah, dated a guy for 2 years in college. He was charming, but not really into church. She prayed about marrying him, but things fell apart. Years later, at 32, she met her husband, a strong believer who leads their home in faith. Looking back, she sees how God spared her from a mismatched marriage that could have pulled her away from her walk. Now, expanding on that protection idea, let's consider how culture plays into this. In today's world, there's so much pressure to couple up young. Social media shows all these perfect weddings and honeymoons, making singleness feel like a failure. But God's not swayed by trends. He knows that marrying too early, before you're mature enough, can lead to problems like financial stress or emotional immaturity. Studies show weight, not studies, but just from what I've seen and heard, that couples who marry in their late teens or early 20s often face higher challenges because they're still figuring out who they are. God might be giving you time to build your identity in Him first, so your marriage is built on a solid foundation, not shifting sands. Matthew 7:24-27 talks about the wise man building his house on the rock. That rock is Jesus. If you marry without that foundation strong, storms come and it crumbles. So this delay could be God helping you dig deep, establish habits like daily prayer, serving in ministry, or even managing money well. All things that make marriage smoother. Diving deeper into identity, a lot of us tie our worth to relationship status. If you're single longer than expected, it can make you question if you're lovable or if God forgot about you. But that's a lie from the enemy. Your value comes from being God's child, not from a ring on your finger. In Psalm 139:14, it says you're fearfully and wonderfully made. God didn't mess up with you. This season is a chance to embrace that truth fully. Without a spouse, you can focus on friendships, hobbies, travel, things that shape you into a well-rounded person. When marriage comes, you'll bring more to the table. I think of Ruth in the Bible. She was widowed young and could have rushed into another marriage, but she waited, served Naomi, and God brought Boaz at the right time. Her story shows how faithfulness in waiting leads to blessing. Let's explore the spiritual side more. Sometimes God delays marriage to draw you closer to Him. When everything's going great, we might not seek God as much. But in singleness, especially prolonged, we lean on Him for comfort, guidance, and joy. It's like James 4:8, draw near to God and He will draw near to you. This time builds intimacy with Jesus that sustains you in marriage too. Because let's be real, marriage won't fix loneliness or insecurity. Only God can. If you married earlier, you might have looked to your spouse for what only God provides, leading to disappointment. A friend of mine, Emily, was single until 38. She used those years to go on mission trips, study the Word deeply, and mentor younger women. Now married, she says her relationship with God is the glue in her marriage. Without that foundation laid in singleness, it might not be as strong. But what if the delay is about ministry or purpose? God might have work for you that requires being single. Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians 7:30-35. He says unmarried people can be fully devoted to the Lord's work without divided interests. Maybe right now God's using you in ways that marriage would complicate, like late-night counseling sessions, spontaneous volunteering, or focusing on career growth that helps others. Think of missionaries or leaders who've impacted thousands because they were single longer. It's not that marriage is bad. It's just that singleness has its own advantages. If God didn't let you marry earlier, perhaps He had an assignment just for this season. Once that's done, marriage might follow. Now let's think about patterns in relationships. Sometimes we repeat mistakes from the past, and God delays to break those cycles. If you've had toxic dating experiences, maybe controlling partners or ones who didn't respect your faith, God might be teaching you to spot red flags. This takes time and reflection. In Hosea 2:6-7, God puts thorns in Israel's way to bring her back to Him. Similarly, closed doors in dating could be God's way of redirecting you. It's merciful, not mean. Take time to journal about past relationships. What went wrong? What did you learn? Use this to grow wiser. Expanding on wisdom, Proverbs is packed with advice on choosing a spouse. Proverbs 18:22 says, "He who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord." But finding the right one requires discernment, which comes with age and experience. If you married earlier without that, you might have chosen based on looks or feelings alone, not character. God delays to refine your vision, so you see people through His eyes, looking for kindness, integrity, shared faith. This prevents regret later. Let's get practical. How do you handle this waiting season without going crazy? First, stay connected to community. Don't isolate. Join small groups. Attend events where you can meet like-minded people naturally, but don't make it all about hunting for a spouse that's exhausting. Focus on serving others. Second, pray specifically. Not just God, send me someone, but show me what you're doing in this time. Third, work on yourself. Read books on healthy relationships like Boundaries in Dating by Cloud and Townsend, simple stuff that helps you prepare. Exercise, eat well, pursue passions. Become the person you'd want to marry. But what if waiting feels endless? Doubt hits. Maybe marriage isn't for me. That's okay to feel, but don't stay there. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us God has plans to prosper us, not harm. If marriage is a desire he placed in you, trust he'll fulfill it. But if not, he has something equally good. Paul was single and content, saying in Philippians 4:11, he's learned to be content whatever the circumstances. Contentment isn't resignation. It's peace in God's sovereignty. Now, shifting to examples from modern life, I know a couple, Mike and Anna. Mike wanted to marry young like his parents did at 22, but he stayed single through his 20s, building his business and volunteering at youth group. Anna was similar single, focusing on nursing school and church choir. They met at 31 through a mutual friend. Now they say the wait made them appreciate each other more. No rushing, no pressure. Their marriage is strong because they entered it whole, not needy. Another story. My cousin Jenny. She dated a lot in her early 20s, always thinking the next guy was the one. But God kept ending those. At 29, she took a break, dove into Bible study on singleness, learned about God's love as ultimate. At 33, she met her husband at a conference. He was widowed with similar values. The delay allowed her to be a stepmom with grace she didn't have earlier. Let's unpack Bible verses more. In Isaiah 40:31, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. Waiting isn't passive, it's active trust that builds endurance. Like training for a marathon, you don't start running 26 miles day one. God builds your spiritual muscles through delay. Consider Joseph, sold into slavery, imprisoned wrongly, waited years for his dream. But that time prepared him to save nations. Your wait might prepare you for something big in marriage or beyond. Now on emotional health, singleness can bring up grief. Missed milestones like weddings, babies. It's normal to feel sad. Lament to God like in Psalms. David poured out his heart. God can handle it. Then find joy in small things. Coffee with friends, walks in nature, hobbies. Gratitude shifts perspective. What about societal pressure? Family asking, when are you settling down? It stings. Respond with grace. I'm trusting God's timing. Set boundaries if needed. Remember, your life isn't defined by others' expectations. Dating apps and such use wisely, but don't rely solely. God can use them, but often meetings happen organically through church, work, friends. If you've been hurt by church teachings on marriage like it's the ultimate goal, remember, Jesus was single. His life was full, purposeful. Singleness isn't second best. Let's talk purity. Waiting longer tests commitment to God's standards on sex, boundaries. It's hard, but builds character. 1 Thessalonians 4:3-5 urges self-control. Use this time to set strong habits. Financially, singleness lets you save, pay debt, build stability. Marriage with money issues is stressful. God might be giving time to get finances in order. Health-wise, focus on physical, mental well-being. Therapy if needed for past traumas. Enter marriage healed. Socially, build a support network. Marriage doesn't replace friends, nurture them now. Spiritually, deepen prayer life, worship service. Marriage will demand time. Stock up on spiritual reserves. Culturally, different places have varying marriage ages. In some, early 20s is norm, others 30s. God's timing transcends culture. Historically, many saints were single or married late. Their lives show fruitfulness in waiting. Psychologically, attachment styles affect relationships. Secure attachment comes from healthy bonds, including with God. Delay might heal insecure patterns. Biblically, Song of Solomon shows ideal love, patient, kind. Rushing opposites that. In Proverbs 19:2, desire without knowledge is not good, how much more will hasty feet miss the way. Haste in marriage misses God's way. Now, real talk. What if you're older, like 40s or 50s, still single? Hope remains. God did miracles for Sarah at 90. Modern stories too. People marrying first time later in life happily. But prepare for possibility of lifelong singleness. If so, it's a gift, per 1 Corinthians 7. Many thrive, traveling, ministering, enjoying freedom. Key is surrender. Like Jesus in Gethsemane, not my will but yours. Hand over marriage desires to God. As we build to the heart of this, remember, God's delay isn't denial. It's preparation, protection, purpose. Here's the climax. The key moment that ties it all together. The real reason God didn't let you marry earlier is because he loves you too much to give you anything less than his best, and his best requires his timing. It's not about what you've done wrong, it's about what he's doing right in your story. In Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to those who love God. That includes delays. When you grasp this, that God's holding back marriage not to hurt you, but to bless you abundantly, you shift from frustration to faith. It's the turning point where waiting becomes worship, and singleness becomes a sacred space. This truth freed so many, including me in my own seasons. Embrace it and watch how peace floods in. Wrapping this up, we've covered a lot, from understanding God's timing through Bible stories like Abraham's, to personal growth, protection from wrong paths, drawing closer to him, and even practical steps for waiting well. The delay isn't random or cruel. It's purposeful, shaping you for a marriage that honors God, or a life of singleness that's equally fulfilling. Trust his plan. It's better than yours. Hit that subscribe button for more on Christian dating and relationships.